Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from whichever part of the world you are watching from, and welcome to this UN 2023 Water Conference talk show on how we can keep the momentum going. Now, my name is Haji Yacoubi, and I am delighted to be your host for today. So first of all, from me to you, a very warm welcome to everyone who's live here with us in Stockholm, but also to all those of you online watching. Now, just before we start this conversation, I do want to make sure that everyone can hear us. Everyone here in the room, we have checked, can understand, hopefully. But also for our online audience, if you want to make use of the interpretation for this session, please do so by clicking on the interpretation tag that is attached to the session stream, and then you can select the language that you want to listen into. And hopefully, you should all be able to hear me then. So once again, I'll say thank you so much for choosing to be here today. Because I truly do believe that your presence here in this room and to everyone that tuned here really underlines the importance of what we are here to discuss today. Because we've all seen the news, right? We've all seen that the disasters of this past year, I mean, the floods, the droughts, the forest fires, just recently here in Sweden as well, the floods that we've seen, that they all are a warning of what's to come if we don't act in time. So if there's anything that we need, then it is a call for action. Now, last March in New York, there was such a call for action, and that was the first UN-dedicated conference on water in nearly 50 years. It was co-hosted by the Kingdom of the Netherlands and the Republic of Tajikistan, together with UN-Water and UN DESA, and it did succeed in uniting the world for water specifically. But then the question remains, of course, what is next, and how can we truly make sure that we keep this momentum going and make sure that we put water at the heart of sustainable development? Well, here with me to discuss that, I am very delighted to welcome, first of all, Mr. Sultan Rahimzoda. Very warm welcome to you. You're the special envoy of the President of the Republic of Tajikistan to the Water and Climate Coalition leaders and chairman of the Executive Committee of the International Fund for Saving the Aral Sea. Then we also have Mrs. Meike van Ginneken, very warm welcome, who is the recently appointed special envoy for international water affairs for the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And last, but definitely not least, seated next to me, Mr. Joachim Howlin, very warm welcome. You're the Chief Freshwater Unit at UNEP, Chief Manager of the UNEP DHI Partnership, and former UN Water Vice Chair. Yes. Very warm welcome.
Thank you.
Meike, if I can start with you, I just talked about, the UN Water Conference, and also, there's been some time that has passed ever since it started, and also even before that, there was quite a very extensive preparatory process. How do you look back at that preparatory process of the UN Water Conference?
Yeah, thanks very much. I think when we, together with Tajikistan and many other friends, started with preparing the conference, we really set out three things. We wanted to be inclusive, we wanted to be cross-sectoral, and we wanted to be action-oriented. I think if you think back about the March event, we did very well on inclusivity. One of the biggest water gatherings ever, non-traditional UN gathering, not only states and governmental representatives, but also non-state, NGO, private sector, academia, etc., etc. Very many groups. So I think on inclusivity we did well. Cross-sectoriality, we're once again in a water event, and I think we need to keep reminding ourselves that we need to be outside, reach out to the food sector, to the energy sector, to the climate community. So I think there we did okay, but it's something that remains a point of attention.
Yeah.
Then the third point was action orientation. We have a beautiful water action agenda, more than 800 commitments, and we'll talk a little bit more about how to keep the momentum, but I think we can declare the March summit a success in terms of action orientation.
Yeah, definitely. Those are some three very nice points. So the inclusivity, the cross-sectorality of it, the action orientation. Yeah, Sultan, if I look at you, I'm also curious, of course, to hear from you as a counterpart from Tajikistan. What were the main highlights coming out of the conference for you?
Thank you. First I would like to congratulate Meike to join our family, Tajikistan, the Netherlands water family.
Yeah.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
Love it. Yeah, we can applaud for that.
With Hank, as he mentioned, we were partners, we were friends, and became brothers.
Yeah.
So be ready.
I think
no
I can't
choice.
promise a brother, but I'll give you a sister. Is that okay?
Perfect. Yeah.
Amazing.
We really enjoyed our collaboration and partnership with our friends from the Netherlands in this way.
Yeah.
It was really complicated, but at the same time exciting, learning from each other to have this historical event in New York. In terms of the main highlights, so I have to say that there are the official parts, official outcomes of the conference, but I would like to highlight maybe 3 messages or my findings from this process.
Yeah.
First, water connects. And the simple example of this is a partnership of Tajikistan, 2 countries with different geographical position, with absolutely different economical situation, upstream and downstream from source to sea, with many facing different challenge, water challenge, but we could do it. So that is power of water to connect these kind of different peoples.
Yeah.
Then through the interactive dialogues, we were able to connect developing countries with developed countries from different continents also. So they jointly lead and organize these interactive dialogues of the conference. And then, as Meike mentioned, this inclusive process brought together different stakeholders, starting from the member states until the civil society, NGOs, indigenous people, and etc. The second moment, which was highlighted by the Secretary General of the UN, that to consider water not as a source, single source, it's much broader. Water is really much broader than the source, and without resolving of water issues, it would be impossible to achieve other SDGs.
Yeah.
So energy, food, environment, every sectors you were looking at this sector, so you will see that water is there. This is cross-sectorality basically. And the third one is action is needed. So if 3 or 4 months before the conference, we were talking about the importance or needed increasing efforts twice to achieve SDG 6. By the conference, we were talking about the need to increase 4 times, quadruple our efforts to achieve SDG 6 by 2030. And right now, after the conference, in the UN Water meeting, it was mentioned that we need to increase our efforts 6 times.
6 times. Wow.
Yeah, to achieve SDG 6 by 2030. So the challenge, unfortunately, faster than our action. So this is a 3 key highlights. Then, very fortunately, we could basically to mobilize our efforts, to unite our efforts. We have Water Action Agenda as one of the major outcomes, collecting more than 800 commitments, which basically put a solid ground for our actions in the future to achieve SDG 6 and other water-related goals. But indeed, there is a need for the follow-up in terms of the implementation, in terms of the accountability, and in terms of monitoring and etc. And this morning we discussed a lot around this. And the third one is a follow-up. So the new UNGA resolution already going, and I hope March that today we have final consultation in UN in New York. I hope March that we will be able to find a consensus among all the member states to submit this resolution to be adopted maybe at the beginning of September. And this follow-up action is really needed about, basically it is about continuity, regularity of the UN water meetings, and the new strategy I will be discussing maybe later. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. But those are clear points, right? About bringing it together, even establishing family as a side effect, right? But also, that is something that I'd like to talk with you about in a little bit as well, how we look forward and how we proceed. But before we do, Joachim, I saw you nodding and listening in very closely. I'm also curious to hear from you, because you, of course, from the side of UN-Water, have been very involved in that preparatory process. How do you look back on it? What stood out for you?
Well, first of all, we were very excited. I mean, needless to say, we haven't had a conference of this sort for a long, long time.
Yeah, 46 years.
Right. And so we, our members and partners mobilized. The first thing I think comes to mind is that we tried to bring our SDG 6 monitoring up to speed to really show and give, you know, the state of the lay of the land on how we're progressing on all the SDGs. And we also had actually a briefing with the PGA on that before the conference. Then we got involved in preparing the interactive dialogue papers, all 5. So we grouped ourselves into groups, depending on our agency's mandates.
Yeah.
And we worked to prepare those dialogue papers. In parallel, then we started also to prepare for a synthesis report.
Yeah.
We knew that we would publish this after the conference because we were going to bring in the findings of the conference, but preparing a report like that requires some prep. So we started with that too. And then, of course, we had a lot of dialogue with our co-hosts, also with UN DESA, to help, prepare and arrange for the conference itself. So that's what sticks out for me in the preparation.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I mean, that is quite some thought as well that goes into it. And thank you to all three of you, because that really does establish a good way to look back. I think indeed, Mike, you mentioned the water action agenda, right? The action orientedness with over 800 commitments. Sultan, you mentioned the ongoing resolution process. And Joachim, I hear you clearly as well about, it being inherently unprecedented that we have had people come together for the first time in nearly 50 years at the UN dedicated specifically to water. But if we take all of this together, right, then this momentum does beg the question, how do we make sure that we keep the momentum going and to truly put water at the heart of sustainable development? So maybe, Mike, if I can look at you for that specific one.
Yeah, I think there is momentum. Let's first say that. I mean, I heard somebody say it's 151 days since the New York conference. I think a lot is happening, and we don't know everything here, but it's around the world, and I think it's something we need to remember. So if you think about keeping the momentum, of course, the process that you talked about in the UN is very important also for the government of the Kingdom of the Netherlands.
Yeah.
I think the second part is getting the agenda, the water agenda, the climate adaptation agenda in the COP later this year, because I think if you talk about cross-sectoral, not only water people talking to water people, I think the climate adaptation and the climate agenda is really an important home for water as well. But I think the third part of this, and by far the biggest part of it, is actually action on the ground, right? Most of those people who put a commitment in, one of those 800 commitments, over 800 commitments, is working on that commitment, right?
Yeah.
And I think whether it's a utility in Latin America, a farmers group in Nepal, a community in the Amazon, a minister of finance in Asia, all these people are making a more water secure world. Let's not forget about that. Let's help them, because I think it's important to keep thinking the challenges are huge,
Yeah.
right? For the first time in our history, humanity has changed the water cycle.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, you can say we don't know how to do this. On the other hand, we have all the skills. No, if you think back 20 years, we have given a lot of people, billion of people, basic access to water.
Yeah.
We're now saying everybody water in the premises. That's great. But let's not forget what we have achieved.
Yeah.
We see more floods, but on the same time, we see actually less people dying of floods because of early warning systems, because of better basin management, because of efficient public expenditure.
Yeah.
So let's think about the skills we have, the initiatives we have, everything that's going on, and let's make sure that we celebrate the successes, that we support champions, and that we don't think if I don't know what's going on, there's nothing going on. There is momentum, and we need to keep going. I'm ambitious. It needs better, smarter, faster, more. 6 times more, you just said.
Yeah.
But let's build on what we have, because we actually have more skills than we think.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that as well. I think that sheds a lot of light, right? I mean, I don't think we should blind stare away from the challenges, but I love how you put it. There's also progress in how we're able to tackle it. So if we accumulate everything and, if we follow through with the commitments that we make and help each other to do that, we can get a whole lot faster to where we need to be. Thank you. Joachim, if I can look at you. I know that UN-Water, you also published a blueprint for acceleration during the high-level political forum. You even have it with you. This is not set in scene, guys. It's just I think telepathy in a way between the two of us. But this is on the outcomes, speaking to the outcomes of the UN 2023 Water Conference. So that is what you've also been doing and keeping busy and making sure that you keep the momentum going.
Right.
What more are you specifically, and is UN-Water specifically doing to keep the momentum going?
Right. So we have the water action agenda.
Yeah.
And we discussing how can we support this through our programs, each member and partner in UN-Water. We're also looking at how we can bring this into what we call the SDG 6 acceleration framework.
Yeah.
There's a need to enable us to sort of follow up and discuss, the implementation of the agenda. So for that purpose, we're also looking into how could we support an intergovernmental process. Maybe we need to publish, regularly something like the synthesis report, but a synthesis on the Water Action Agenda implementation.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we have to discuss, right?
Yeah.
We've also seen that
I see nodding.
Yeah,
so,
that's
I think something's brewing.
we're looking at how we can strengthen coordination between ourselves,
Yeah.
how we can be more coordinated also, not just at the global level, but the regional and national level, because we need to have more impact there. We need to work closer with the UN country teams and with partners and others on the ground. We see that there's a need also to have water more integrated into our own organizations. So we've looked also self-reflectively a little bit. What can we do? So we've discussed maybe to engage our executive heads.
Yeah.
We've talked about the need of developing a UN system-wide strategy for water and sanitation. And we also talked about how can we perhaps support a special envoy on water if this is decided was one of the outcomes of the conference.
It was.
And finally, we've had a bit of, you could say, soul searching also internally. How can we do a better job of bringing water into other intergovernmental processes and mainstreaming that? And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a session tomorrow, but this is something that is we also working on.
Can you give us like maybe a little tip, first insight, sneak peek?
Well, the sneak peek into that is, how instead of coming, like in piecemeal to the COP, can we have a joint UN water voice and messaging to the climate convention?
Yeah.
Yeah. We heard the same thing when it comes to biodiversity. We provided technical advice on freshwater biodiversity, but now we have to help implementing the new global biodiversity framework.
Right.
How can we roll out nature-based solutions at scale? How can we work with different water aspects to combat disasters and risks?
Right. So that does touch upon what Maaike mentioned earlier as well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
28 and bringing in water.
I'm just giving you some examples.
Yeah, no, thank you so much.
Food and energy, we can go on.
There's so much, but tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much for sharing that as well.
Thank you.
Sultan, if I can then go to you, because some things have been mentioned so far, and I think Joachim did shed a very good light on, like specifically what the UN, systems-wide can do to implement that better. To strengthen all of this, Tajikistan, together with the Netherlands and Senegal, are also leading on the resolution. You just mentioned it. Can you maybe tell us more about this process and how we can further strengthen water within the UN in general?
Thank you. Basically, the new draft resolution, which is being now under consideration of the member states in the UN, it comes basically from the outcomes of the discussion of the fifth interactive dialogue dedicated to Water Action Decade, mostly focused on the follow-up. The first message or even request from the member states was, we cannot wait another 57, 56 or around 50 years to have another conference.
Yeah.
There should be a mechanism about the regularity of the UN gatherings, UN conferences. And very fortunately, the first point, which is in the new draft resolution, this issue about the regularity of the water conferences.
Wow.
The second moment is special envoy.
Yeah.
Before the conference, it was a letter signed by 150 countries to the Secretary General of the UN to appoint a special envoy. Fortunately, it is on the agenda, on the table of the Secretary General, and we hope, Mark, that very soon also the special envoy will be appointed. And the third one, it was about the systemic approach. So we need to systematize our approach to coordinate our actions within the one system, which should be clear and understandable for all the stakeholders. And for that, as Joachim mentioned, basically the new resolution includes also development of the new UN system-wide strategy on water and sanitation, which should basically include the new approach of the UN and beyond, because the request also, the wish of the different parties and the stakeholders that it shouldn't be only as a strategy for the UN system, but also even beyond to coordinate all the activities around water globally.
Yeah.
So this is I mean that
points,
it's
Yeah.
included in the new draft resolution again. So we hope, Mark, that today we will find a consensus among the member states.
Yeah.
Let's hope, fingers crossed.
Yeah,
And
that
then
we
it will
can-
go to silent procedure, and maybe at the beginning
go
of
on. But those
September the resolution will be adopted.
Yeah.
But
Thank
it's
you so
really
much.
good that we have this immediate, the action after the conference, having this
Yeah.
kind of.
Right, to follow up on it. I think that's what I take back from all of you, that is so important. And there's a lot of things on the schedule and agenda to do. So I'm very happy to hear how everything is being taken forward. Now, you do run out of time very fast when you're talking about these interesting things. But don't worry. First of all, I want to say this was a very brief overview of the outcomes of the UN 2023 Water Conference. But if you want to hear more about it, tomorrow there will be a more elaborate session with different stakeholders present as well. So make sure to tune in. It's from 2 p.m. until 3:30 p.m. Stockholm time here in room A4 if you're physically with us present now. So make sure to tune in. And with that being said, I just want to say, can I have a big round of applause to our three guests? Thank you so much for everything you shared so far.
Thank you.